There's not many games in the world that manage to captivate the feel and theming of a franchise like Starship Troopers Extraction. One that comes to mind is Alien Isolation, that manages to precisely pinpoint the exact feel of an Aliens universe. So when I jumped into Starship Troopers, the feel of the guns and the amount of kick they gave, the plasticky looking nature of the armor sets really stood out to me as, yeah, this looks just like the movies. Even though the graphics are not as photorealistic or as flashy as some games, I do feel like they're good enough to match the style and aesthetic and feel of the film. When Starship Troopers is at its best, it does feel like a fight for survival until that last minute where you can extract. In the same way that everything about this game is designed to feel like Starship Troopers, everything about this game also needs a finesse and a polish to it as well that is just lacking. Guns have a weight to them. They have a recoil that is heavy and an audio that sounds punchy. And once again, manages to match the universe of Starship Troopers. You really do feel like a Marine in a group of Marines in this game. Starship Troopers does some really interesting things that I feel like set it apart from other competitors. They have this focus on base building and hordes, and they have less of a emphasis on objectives and missions. And it's one of the first things that really set this apart from games like Helldivers to me. The games go up to 16 players, and that base building aspect, along with the number of players in the game, really made this game feel like you were a squad in an army just trying to survive a horde, where in Helldivers you feel more like an elite force like ODST, focusing on reaching your goals and executing your orders, where Starship Troopers feels like more of a fight to survive. And that's where it really shines. It shines in its chaos. Where I started my journey with this game was in the tutorial, and straight off the bat, it was incredibly dull. You're stuck to these small corridors versus small groups of enemies that are relatively easy to dispatch. It tries to teach you the fundamentals of the game, and I think it does an okay job with this, but the issue was the length of the tutorial. I think after 10 episodes or so, I ended up just saying, right, let's play the actual game because this is getting very dull and it's just far too long and tends to repeat itself a lot. In the main game, you have 4 primary game modes: Horde, Advanced and Secure, Arc, and Hive Hunt. Hive Hunt can almost immediately be discarded. It's very similar to the tutorial: dull, corridors, not very long, and not a lot happens in them. They didn't have the scope that I was looking for in a Starship Troopers, and as an addition, they didn't have the chaos that a Starship Troopers should have. Advanced and Secure was about securing resource nodes and using them to finally call in a base that you'd have to defend from a horde. The securing nodes part was very, very bland, very flat, didn't really have a lot to it. I ended up waiting around a lot of the time, just waiting for stuff to finish, waiting for a player to take resource from A to B, waiting for a group of enemies to spawn in so I could actually shoot something. This might be an issue with the difficulty, but you also can't select a difficulty. So it's not like I could have chosen to do a harder version of the mission if they weren't available. Arc was similar, but in a slightly bigger, grander scale. You still had to collect resources to power up a base, but it was all done simultaneously, and I feel like it could possibly be the main game mode. You're going around, collecting resources, bringing them back to your base, defending the base from groups of enemies. During this time, I found there was a lot of downtime. I ended up actually searching out enemies to kill because no one was really having a challenge with anything. Again, this could have been a difficulty issue, but because the game modes are missing that difficulty selection, you can only really play what the game offers you. And it does offer you a selection of all the game modes, but the difficulties are varying. You can't always pick the difficulty you want to play at. It's very odd that a difficulty selection isn't in the game, because I end up playing these game modes that are quite interesting and fun to play because of the chaos they bring. But if I play them on normal, everyone just wipes the bugs out so quickly that there's nothing really to do. At the end of the Arc game mode, when your base is fully resourced up and everyone's been contributing to build it, you have to then survive a horde. And once the horde is beaten, leave on an extraction. I feel like this is an extremely mild Horde, as we were honestly waiting for waves to come in because we were dealing with them so quickly. Again, it led to the game mode feeling boring and stale and waiting to kill something. The game mode I played did also have a modifier attached to it, saying I hope you enjoy the dark. And that sounded really, really interesting to me, thinking that the bugs would be coming out of nowhere, actually having to use light sources. But the actual level looked incredibly odd. It's like they just turned global illumination off, and you could see lava way off in the distance, but it wasn't lighting anything up. So the way they've dealt with turning the lights off, so to speak, it makes the level look like there's a graphical glitch going on instead of how it was actually designed to be. It honestly feels a bit half-assed. Now, the final game mode, and absolute my favourite, is Horde. You're given a short time to prep and build a base, put down your ammo boxes, build your walls up, and it is quite a short time. Now, with 16 players playing, the time isn't really an issue, but I found that the allocation of resources would always jump straight to the players that were very good at base building, and wouldn't give people like me, who was just getting into the game, a chance to really build anything. By the time I had decided what I wanted to build, worked my way through the menus, and then started building it, I'd be halfway through building it, and the mode would either be over, or by the time I went to pick my item, someone would have already used the limited amount of resources you have to actually build something. There was a number of times where I would think, this place would be really good for a gun turret, and I would go to the gun turret and go to place it down, to find that the thousands of resources that are allocated to you have already been used up by the other 15 players. The other issue I had is the build system feels very, very frustrating to use at times. Glitching, allowing me to put turrets in one place, and then once it's destroyed, not allowing me to put it into the same place for some reason. Build. Place. Why not? Why hasn't it placed? Someone tell me what... That guy could do it.
10 seconds to get that base online.
And I never understood or had any feedback to tell me why it wasn't working. At one point I could put a turret on a wall, and then on the next point I couldn't put a turret on the wall. I would be trying to build an item before the timer ran out, and the bar just wasn't going up. Is it to do with lack of resources? Is it to do with the timer running out? Am I close enough to the object? I just wasn't sure what the issue was. Thinking I didn't know how the building system worked, I went back into the tutorial to try it out in there, to have literally no issues whatsoever. So this really unique aspect of the game that adds a lot to it, and adds a sense of uniqueness to every run, with different base layouts and different ideas, different strategies, really didn't work in a usable manner that led new players able to actually experience what it's like to build a base. There were so many times where I would start to build something, and as I nearly finished building, the timer would run out, and it would stop me from building that item. This is a really odd choice to me. If I've placed a building down and started building it before the timer runs out, it should let me finish building that object, but it never did. The number of times I had towers half built, turrets half built, walls half built, because I was a new player and I was relatively slow at building, was incredibly frustrating. And every single time it left me with a sigh of just, well, why do I even bother? I've just wasted resources, time, and someone else could have done that so much quicker. It's this barrier to entry with the build system that doesn't feel good, and it's part of the refinement this game needs to go from to a good game. Well, once the squad has finished building the base, it's time to defend. And the first couple of rounds of the Horde mode are reasonably subtle, but after 2 and 3 waves, things start ramping up a lot. They throw new bugs at you, they throw artillery pieces at you, they throw everything under the sun as it gets further and further to wave 10. And as your base starts breaking and weak points are discovered, things start getting so chaotic. And this is where the game shines. In other game modes, I never felt this sense of urgency. Where in the Horde mode, as we got to wave 8 and 9 and 10, and things started breaking around us, there was this real sense of panic. There was this real sense of being a Marine, being a squad in the Starship Troopers universe, and almost perfectly matched scenes from the movies where bases were being overrun. The game also has this incredible system where when a bug dies and its body is on the floor, that body can act like a piece of terrain. You can break the bodies down with a melee or a grenade, and you tend to have to, because if you let the bodies build up outside the walls, the bugs will just climb up the bodies and into the walls, and it really adds something to this game. It's like, okay, right, they're building, let them build. I'm going to go break the bodies. I'm going to go and grenade these bodies over here. I'm going to clear out some space to make sure the bugs don't have an advantage wave upon wave upon wave. So the Horde mode in my eyes was definitely the standout. And I feel like they should take the chaos of the Horde mode and balance the other modes to feel more like that. The Arc game mode needs more chaos. There needs to be a really big attack after you've spent time building your base with the limited resources you have. The Advanced and Secure game mode, I think, needs a longer Horde mode at the end of the game. Once you've completed your games, you then level up your account, you level up your class, and you level up the weapons that were used. One of the issues I had was leveling up of the weapons. The guns you have equipped only get experience if they get a kill. And on the surface, these may sound obvious, but if you don't ever use your pistol because you're using your big gun, you're going to very, very slowly level your pistol up. What I think there should be is there should be a balance where maybe 50% of the experience of your total kills goes to your secondary, meaning it gradually levels up over time as you have it equipped. This then leads to it not being frustrating to use your secondary when it's not leveled up in harder game modes. As you level up your weapons, you will unlock sights, magazines, and other different equipment and attachments for the gun. I really like this. I would actually like to see more of it. I would like to see more scopes, more attachments, more muzzles, this kind of thing for the weapons. I am a massive weapon customization freak, and I always want to see a little bit more added to it. Because at the moment, there's only a few different upgrades you can select. One of the really nice things, though, is if you level the gun up on one class, it'll level the gun up for all the other classes. If I'm using the Mark 1 rifle and get a scope for it, that scope is now unlocked for all the classes that use that gun. This is perfect. As you level your account up, you will unlock various different skins and slight customizations, little stickers for your character. Nothing that good. There's a few stickers that I chuckled at, but none of the customization outside of the DLC is interesting at all. And honestly, even the DLC customization is extremely bland. We're talking green, beige, slightly different colored beige, slightly different colored green. And honestly, Call of Duty does this perfectly, and it should be replicated in this game. If you go and get to max level across every single gun, give yourself a gold camo. Because at the moment, there's just nothing to chase on the cosmetic side. The other thing you'll unlock as you level your account up is slots in your classes, so you can carry more equipment into battle. So lastly, there is actually leveling up the classes themselves, and this is how you unlock more perks. And these perks are class specific, and all the ones that I would look at fit into the archetype of that role really nicely. The medic can end up building a little stim depository so your allies can pick up their own stims for later. The gunner has more armor and also can scent themselves with a pheromone that kind of taunts the enemy. It fulfills this class fantasy where he's saying, I'm the big gunner and I'm going to sit here and take the damage and put my shields up and dish it back out. And the medics can help support the team more. Generally, the game does have enough variety in classes and builds and guns to give yourself a consistent level of progression as you play. You level up reasonably quickly as well. It didn't take me very long to get quite a few perks and weapons and loadouts across multiple different classes. One thing about the Starship Troopers movies that it really portrayed the deadliness of bugs when they got into close proximity. And that's something this game really does emulate very well. Everything's fine and dandy until a bug gets on top of you. Then you're in trouble. And I think it's just one of the additions that this game has to make it feel like Starship Troopers. With the graphics not being the premium standout feature of this game, and the number of bugs on screen, I think the performance is fine. It's definitely nothing special in performance, it's just fine. I was running at about 80 FPS with some settings turned down, And a game that looks like this, I think that's fine. Though I do hope they continue to improve the performance of the game. I also had issues where bugs would just disappear and reappear randomly. Bugs would just spawn into the world and wouldn't do their coming out of the ground animations. And it just adds to the fact that the game is not as polished as it should be for a 1.0. I had issues where I couldn't climb up ladders. Bugs hitting you through walls I found was quite a big thing, especially the bigger bugs. Because there's nothing on the death screen that tells you what killed you, you aren't always sure what it was that you died to. So that lack of feedback is sometimes really frustrating when you just look at the screen and be like, what did I die to? One of the biggest issues I think this game has is its player longevity. There will be a time in the future when not a lot of people are playing this. It is just the way games go. So the fact this game doesn't have an AI supported game mode is incredibly worrying to me. If you buy this game right now, there is a chance that you will not be able to play it in the future because they just doesn't have the player population. So I really think they should be working on adding an AI game mode so that players that buy this in the future can continue to play it. With all that being said and done, there is one big bug in the room, and that's Helldivers 2. This game came out before Helldivers 2, and during its early access window, Helldivers 2 exploded into the gaming scene. And for really good reasons. The game was really well polished, it ran really well, it looked gorgeous. And even though it didn't fulfill the same fantasy, it did fulfill a very similar fantasy. This game is different from Helldivers. The first person perspective and the focus on defending a construction that you and your team have built does give it a different feel than Helldivers. But this game is also nowhere near as polished as Helldivers. The game design of Helldivers, everything jibes perfectly together. Your stratagems, your shooting, the ammo economy, the working together as a team, the interaction between objectives and missions, and the map itself, everything flows beautifully and is polished in such a way that it feels exquisite to use. And I cannot say the same for Starship Troopers. And the nail in the coffin for Starship Troopers is the fact it's more expensive than Helldivers. Right now in the UK, Starship Troopers is $39.99 with DLC packs of cosmetic items. And I would say that all 4 of which are boring and completely worthless. Meanwhile, Helldivers 2 is £35. It is £5 cheaper than Starship Troopers. It is a more polished game. It is a better looking game. It is a more refined experience than Helldivers. And I don't worry about its player base. When it comes down to a business model as well, not only is Helldivers cheaper, you can actually grind in-game to unlock their season passes for free. And they are not time gating their season passes. Right now, you can go in and grind out the necessary currency to buy the very first season pass they released, what they call war bonds. The items in there are more interesting. The cosmetics are more interesting, they have more weapons, and it's cheaper. And it's honestly the reason that I cannot recommend Starship Troopers. Even though it's not exactly the same game, they're similar enough for me to make comparisons. And Starship Troopers is just not up to the level of polish and execution that Helldivers is. If you want to find out more on that, go watch my Helldivers 2 video. But that's all I have to say on Starship Troopers. Thanks for watching. If you did like this video, hit that like button and subscribe button for more content, and I'll see you guys all very soon.